Okay, we're going to have a look at some meeting traffic. Quite simply, meeting traffic is where there are obstructions that would cause us coming up the road in this learner car to be facing or going towards oncoming traffic. It's usually parked cars, but other times it could be traffic calming measures or even certain types of bridges, maybe a humpbacked or an arched bridge that could cause these situations. What we need to do is first of all think about priority. Priority, quite simply, if the obstruction's on our side, it's our problem. The red car has priority and we can't cause it to change speed or direction. We're going to be using a mirror signal manoeuvre routine to deal with these, checking centre and right mirrors to make sure there's no one overtaking. A lot of the time you don't need to signal, your position can show people what's going on, and you need to move out round the parked car so you're at least a door's width away. That's pretty obvious in case someone opens a door, and in this situation, in case this pedestrian steps out, you could stop. And because in this situation we can keep this door's width away, there's no reason to actually slow down. We're not interfering with the car coming the opposite direction, so we can probably keep our speed up. And then once we've passed the yellow car, checking our centre and left mirrors and make sure we can see the yellow car in both, we'll return back to our normal driving position. Let's have a look at the situation to our right now, the next road. We're coming up here, the red car's coming the other way, we know about priority, you know about which mirrors to check. We still might be able to fit through here, but our gap is significantly smaller. Now, in this situation again, we still don't want to inconvenience the red car coming the other way. You might still decide to proceed, but make sure you're a lot slower. We need to be at a speed where we could stop if someone opened a door again, or in fact, if this pedestrian walked out. And because we're closer, that means we're going to go a lot slower. Make sure you still don't inconvenience the red oncoming car though. Okay, next. Now if this vehicle's a little bit further out, there's not as much room. There's not enough room to actually go through with the red car. So what we'll be doing here with the learner car is actually trying to take our time arriving at this meeting situation, and if we do that well enough, the red car may even be able to continue and go past, and then we'll be able to continue through after without stopping. It's not always possible though. If there are vehicles coming down the road, we may have to give way and wait, and the position to do that is near the centre line of the road, the same position you would take up if you were turning right, as long as there's no issues here. And also we need to keep at least a couple of car lengths back. What that does, it allows us a better view up the road and also gives us less steering to go out once it is clear. We would then let the red car finish and then obviously use MSM to proceed through after. The next situation. Have a look at the road on the right hand side first of all. There's parked cars on both sides, no one has priority. So what we need to do in this situation is always be the one who's prepared to give way. Make eye contact with the car coming the opposite direction and see what they're doing. If this red car holds back and waits up here, it's leaving you space to continue. Check your mirrors and proceed. If the red car keeps moving, it's not leaving you enough space. So you hold back, and the place to hold back will be round in this area, leaving enough room for the car coming the other way to clear both, and then you can proceed after. Quite straightforward. The road on the left hand side is probably a little bit wide for what I'm after explaining about. What I'm really thinking about here is imagine a road that's not big enough for two people to come from both directions. You couldn't fit past together. What you need to do if you're the car coming where the learner car is look up the road and proceed up the road in little stages. Pulling into a passing space is good because that may allow the other car to proceed. Also, waiting opposite a passing space is also good because then that allows the other car to head in, you can proceed, and the other car can get on with its journey after. Any questions with meeting traffic? We're now going to have a look at crossing traffic. What crossing traffic is usually when you're turning right, the act of going across into this new road and crossing the path of cars coming the other way. You can also cross traffic is if you're going straight on at crossroads, and what you would be doing is actually crossing the path of this one and this one coming the other way. And it's quite simple to actually deal with. If we're coming up here and we're crossing the path of the red car, quite simply we ask ourselves, if we would walk from the front of our car across to our new road without making this car change speed of direction, we can cross, we can go. But there's one extra thing that's a must before you cross traffic. You must make sure your exit road's clear. Have a look at this pedestrian walking across. If this pedestrian's walking across our road, you wouldn't cross, you'd wait here. If this van's blocking our way, if something was coming the other way, there's no room to exit, so you'd wait here. So remember, if you can walk across, you can drive across, but your exit road must be clear. We're going to have a look at overtaking. First of all, to overtake, it's got to be safe, legal and worth it. If you have a look at the signs on the right hand side, you wouldn't overtake if there were pedestrian crossings. You wouldn't overtake if there was a bend you couldn't see. You wouldn't overtake if there's a junction coming up. You wouldn't overtake if you had to break the speed limit, and definitely if there was a no overtaking sign. That no overtaking sign would probably mean that there would be a solid line down the centre of the road as well. So look out for all these things. Now, our process to overtake happens as we come up to but never closer than a safe separation distance. That, in good weather, is 2 seconds. The routine that we're going to be using to go through this overtake is MPSL MSM, and that's mirror, position, speed, look, mirror, signal, maneuver. Let me explain. We check our mirrors and position our car to get the best view of the road ahead. So we might be checking our centre and left mirrors and positioning a little bit to the left. We might be checking our centre and right mirrors and moving and positioning a little bit to the right to get the best view of what's going on. We've then got to sort our speed out, and that means considering a lower gear for the overtake. Lower gears give us more power and we'll be able to produce quicker acceleration to get through the overtake quickly and safely. And the look is the final look to make sure all of these things are taken into account, whether it's safe, legal and worth it. So once we've decided it is safe, legal and worth it, we're going to be using a mirror signal maneuver routine to move safely out to the right. Me personally, I would definitely signal. I'd signal right, because that right signal tells the car that you're overtaking that you're going to come round it. Then, when you're alongside the car, do it briskly within the speed limit, and then to safely come back in, you'll cancel the signal, and then check in your centre and left mirrors before you move back to the left hand side. Only move back in when you can see the car that you've overtaken. We're going to have a look at some clearance. And first of all, we're going to have a look at the 2 second rule. This is us, learner car. We're following the yellow one. We must be at least 2 seconds behind. That's in good weather. Now, how we do that is quite simple. As the vehicle that we're following passes a stationary object, something like a tree, what we need to do is start counting. The way I like to count 2 seconds is quite simply count bananas. 1 banana, 2 banana. Takes about 2 seconds to say. So if we start counting when the yellow car passes that tree, if we can finish counting 2 seconds by the time that we get to the tree, we know we're further away than 2 seconds. In poor weather, it should be 4 seconds. The gap should obviously be bigger. However, it does work at any speed. So you can use this 2 second rule at 30 and you can also use it up to 70, not a problem. One added thing, we should have a 2 second space in between us and the vehicle in front. If the vehicle behind is travelling close and too close, what this space is missing, we need to add on to our space up here. So if this is only 1 second behind, we should have 3 seconds in between us and the car in front. That allows us to slow us down in a smoother time over a longer period if there was any problems a little bit further up. Okay, the next thing that we're going to deal with is our clearance side to side. What we need to be when we're passing parked vehicles is, if we can, an open doors width or a metre away from these parked vehicles. That's just in case they open a door or a pedestrian sets foot out, we could stop if there are any problems. There are certain times where if the space is smaller we can get closer, but our speed must be reduced as well. Passing a cyclist is a little touch different. Yes, we still need to be a doors width, an open doors width or a metre at least, but to be honest, if there's more, you should give it more. Hoops shouldn't move the cyclist, should move the car. There we go. So if you've got more space, use it. Don't ever get closer than a metre or an open doors width from a cyclist, because they do have a tendency to wobble or fall off. Lastly, if it was a horse we were coming round, I wouldn't be in this situation. I'd probably hold back, let the red car finish, and once it's safe and there's enough room, be all the way over here, giving the horse as much room, passing as slowly and as wide and as safely as we can before I come back in. Last little thing is tyres on tarmac. When we're pulling up and stopping behind a vehicle, we need to leave enough space so we could get out. Now, if you just have a quick look at this picture. This picture shows, I know the car's parked at the side of the road, but it's a similar type of space that we would use if we were stopping in a queue. If you can see the tyres on the tarmac of the car behind or of the car in front when we're stopping behind, you know you've got plenty of space to head out. If it was a bus or a lorry or something bigger, you need to keep further back. What that allows you to do is to see more down the sides. For example, this dog walker is probably visible from back here, but if you were closer up you wouldn't see it. And it's quite simple with a bus or a lorry as well. If you can see the top of the lorry and a little bit of sky above, the same sort of distance as you can see tyres on tarmac, you know you're about the right sort of distance. It's not always possible to see the lorry or the bus's wing mirrors, as you can see in this picture, because if you do see their mirrors, you're probably too far back. People will think you're doing something different. So it's not always practical to see their mirrors, but if it's possible, add that in as well. But top and sky's enough. Have you got any questions? Lastly, we're going to have a look at some anticipation. First thing, when we're driving down the road, we need to look in loads of different places. Close, mid, and far distances. And we also need to scan a lot from side to side. Don't just look directly in front. You've got to be scanning around from one side to the other throughout. Do also the same with your mirrors behind you. What we're doing when we're on the road, we're trying to anticipate different categories of people. We're trying to anticipate cyclists, pedestrians and other drivers. Let's have a look at a couple of examples. If we're driving down this road here and what we see is a ball come out in between these parked cars, you probably expect the child to run out after. Always be ready to stop. A little touch further up the road, we see a cyclist, and this cyclist looks over his shoulder. What would you expect him to do next? Maybe move out into the road. We need to be ready for that as well. The next thing, on the other side of the road, we're following a bus. You see someone in this bus stand up and walk to the front. What do you expect the bus driver to do next? Probably park. So what we need to be ready to do is to move around the bus if it's safe. So ask yourself the question, what if? All these briefings are used on the iPad with apps produced by a guy called Neal. I use these apps on a daily basis. They're quite simply the best on the market. I'm not being paid to say this about these apps. I would turn around and recommend these apps to anyone learning to be a driving instructor.